Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well. You beautiful, amazing, wonderful people. And yes, you are looking absolutely amazing today. Do you know what? A lot of people have been asking me this question. You've probably seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, so you know what the video's about. I've got some things I've written down here. Because I think people how can I say, they misunderstand about how important the choice of weapon was in the Idaho 4 case. Because my opinion is that because of the weapon that was used, it can mean that it wasn't a certain person and that it was another type of person. We'll get into it and I'll explain what I mean by that. So look, why would somebody choose to go with a K-bar knife? K-bar knife. Just a knife. Let's say knife in general. That's what we're saying in general. So in a country that guns are relatively easy to get hold of, we see even kids getting hold of them, don't we? In these mass shootings. So if this was just about killing, if this was just about brutal killing, and we've got to think that if someone was going to walk into this house with the risk that it was going to be a few people in there, you know that there was cars outside there was cars that were alien to the property, such as Kaylee Gonsalves' new Range Rover. It was an unfamiliar vehicle, and this was a night where there could have potentially been 20 plus people in this house very, very easily, because this was a house that was renowned as being a bit of a party house. There was frequently police having to go to this property to complain. I do find it quite interesting that there does seem to be so many complaints about noise and complaints about these parties. Who was complaining? Who was actually the people picking up the phone and calling the cops? Or was it just the cops off their own back going to this house? Maybe the house had become that notorious that they just decided to go there and say there had been a complaint. Because as with most of Moscow PD's paperwork, there just seems to be no report. But anyway, I digress. Back to the matter in hand, and that is the choice of weaponry in this mass murder. So if this was just about killing, or I would go as far as saying if this was a narcotics-related killing and it was just about sending a message. Murder sends a message. Like some people turn around and said the choice of knife shows that this was about sending a message. But no, death tends to send a message. That is the most brutal message of all. If someone had have walked in there with an AK-47, the message would have been extremely clear. Extremely clear. So I would say that I'm 99.9% sure that a narcotic scenario can be ruled out. Now, we have talked about narcotics. It's unfortunate that these poor victims had narcotics on the peripherals of their lives. But I feel that for what we have seen, it's unlikely that there was a connection between these peripheral narcotic connections and what happened inside that house at 1122 King Road. And is the choice of weapon a bit more of a sign as to who or why this crime happened? So we have to understand that if the person has got a knife, for instance, is it because they just simply don't have access to a gun? They just don't have access. And this was a very quick decision to do this. This wasn't something that was considered over time. Because I would still say that if considering this crime over time, then a gun would have been a better choice of weapon. Much better choice of weapon. There was cameras around the area. If say we want to factor Brian Koberger into this crime, he clearly did not really care about getting caught. Because he drove his own car. Someone doesn't drive their own car right up to the house that they are looking to commit a mass murder if they are bothered about getting caught. It's like going from a state that has no death penalty to going to a state that has one and saying, well, this person cares about if they get caught the death penalty. They clearly don't. If you're factoring Brian Kohberger into the equation, he couldn't have cared what the repercussions were in the event that he got caught. As equally as he couldn't have cared about getting caught if he was willing to drive his own vehicle right up to the house. Now, people will say, well, people have drove their own cars up to houses and committed murders before. Yes, and we know about that because they've all got fucking caught. Do you know what I mean? People who don't get caught and all these murders that go unsolved, the unsolved crimes, we don't know the details of because they were careful to the point of not getting caught. And I would say that with Brian Kohberger's knowledge, he could have been able to do this crime without getting caught. He was a fit guy. He could have parked 2 miles, 3 miles down the road and ran to the fucking house and committed the crime. But anyway, that's by and by. So, to have a knife, in this hand, I think you have to consider this. So, do you consider that if someone was planning this over time, there was a better weapon to do it? A better weapon to do it. To be quick, to be efficient, to be in, to be out, to be away. And I still believe that is a gun. A gun can kill from distance. There's no closeness. You don't have to get close. You don't have to be risking of getting a scratch in the face, a punch in the face and skin cells on the knuckles, on the hands of a victim. All of that is eradicated because you kill from a distance, Alex Murdoch. So I put here, in order to then factor in a knife, we go down a different route. That is either someone who has quickly decided that I've got to do this is being done now. It's a knee-jerk reaction to a situation, and the only thing they have is a K-bar knife. Now, if you factor that mentality into this crime, then you have to look at the fraternity situation, the frat boys and the drunkenness and the fights and the arguments, the steroid use, the shriveled balls conversation, the fight that nearly resulted in Xana Knodle's family having to drive over and make sure that things are okay. So you can't downplay that. And Xana's mum herself has spoken about the fact that this fight happened. So we know it happened and that Xana's family were going to drive over. Her father was going to drive over and see what was going on. So you can't ignore that, especially pairing that with the fact that we have seen photographs with frat members wielding these weapons. But again, that's not the only one. The K-bar knife, for instance. So we know that there are fraternity members that have one. So there you have it. That's that. And maybe law enforcement have gone through these guys with a fine tooth comb and they know it weren't there. Maybe they pulled all the knives in that they've seen that they had, and everything has been accounted for. Everything's been tested. Nothing missing. No knife sheaths missing. Everything's in order. They could have done that. So, then you have the fact that it is a K-bar knife itself. K-bar knife. Now, there are many knives. But let's look at the crime itself specifically, about some things that Kathy Mabbutt said, and think how that factors into K-bar. First of all, I'd like to say that we don't know that the murder weapon was a K-bar. We don't know that. We know that there was a K-bar knife sheath left at the scene, and it was a leather knife sheath. That's what they've said. Leather embossed. And that's an important factor, that is, and I'll tell you for why. Kathy Mabbutt and many of us have been led to believe that there was potentially 2 weapons used. Are you with me so far? And that's important. I'll tell you why. Now, either that's a fact and there was 2 weapons used, or there was a change in how that weapon was used. Because the K-bar knife, I've spoken on this at depth before, it was known for abilities in various types of use in close combat. And for someone to facilitate this crime with this weapon in this manner to make it appear to be two different types of weapon, then they must have had quite in-depth knowledge of using this specific knife. And I have done a video on that more in depth. I don't know where it is, somewhere on this channel. But look, the early K-bar knife, so this was one that didn't go into mass production for the general public, wasn't a great knife, and it had to go through a series of events that would bring us to where we are now, with the mass-produced, the one that everyone's come to know and love. And what they would find is that people in the armed forces who were using this knife, eventually that would fade in use, and they would end up having to use a secondary weapon. Much like, I can't remember what the weapon was called. It was much like a large Bowie knife, but they would use that. It's like a mini machete. And I know that by saying that, some of you are going to be thinking, that's kind of what we've been led to believe is potentially these weapons. These weapons factor into this crime, because that's how the injuries have been described to us. Now, it could have been that the weapon had just faded. So was this K-bar knife an actual, not a mass-produced one, one of the later models, but a much earlier one? So if this was a much earlier K-bar, who would have that? Because you could argue, why would somebody who didn't have one and was going to do this crime, and they were going to buy one, why would they buy one that was renowned for not being great? That was known for breaking, was known for blunting, was known for slipping out of hands. It wasn't a great knife. Someone, again, this could come down to the fact that someone had one, and who would have an early style military grade one, and then carry a backup weapon because they knew that the potential for this knife to fade during what they were intending to do, which again, this would further point to the fact that there wasn't just one target, there was multiple targets. They were going to go into this house and just do this crime. But anyway, like I say, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm just spitballing there. But I think people don't appreciate how important this choice of weapon was. If this was just about a knife, like I said, there are so many knives that are available. You can go and buy so many, and so many that look way more capable and way more evil and way more devastating in what they can do than the humble K-bar, which is effective, but it's not the best. Not the best at all. So was this simply about a crime that was a knee-jerk reaction? Something happened, something sparked, and this was brutality unplanned. So this was just about using what they had access to. They already had it, and that's what was used. Why would a complete stranger, who we're supposed to believe had stalked a house, reconnaissance work, planned everything meticulously, why would they use a knife when they could have used a gun? Now, some might say noise. It's all about noise. But if they thought they were going to go into this house while they were asleep, there's ways that they could have, again, minimised the noise, but provided more safety to them. The distance again. Being able to go in, dunk, 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 done. Out, gone, away. Why this specific weapon? And what is the true significance of it? Who had one? Would somebody rarely go out and buy this specific weapon to do this specific crime, when there are far better ways? Let me know down below, and I'll catch you in court later today as we find out when this fucking trial's going to happen and potentially where, and hair on some deadlines as to things that have to be done prior to this all kicking off. I'll catch you all there. Have a fantastic, fantastic day.